too. Oh my goodness, those actually look so good. Fish tacos, skin of a lion mukbang. So let's talk about Michael Ondaatje.
Yeah.
And the skin of a lion.
The Skin of a Lion is set in early 1900s Toronto, Canada, and tells the story of immigrants and their experiences in a quickly evolving, industrialized world. It begins with Patrick Lewis, born in rural Ontario with his father, who works at a foresting company as an explosive expert. The story moves on to illustrate the building of the Bloor Street Viaduct in Toronto. Patrick moves to Toronto and is employed as a seeker, searching for clues relating to the disappearance of aristocrat Ambrose Small. The book focuses on the different experiences of immigrants all over the city. No matter what group they are from, each character struggles to find a footing in the changing city and faces the same issue of alienation. Ondatjee comments on how the people who built the city are forgotten in its history, and through his novel, attempts to give these people a voice. But does he succeed? Post-colonial theorist Spivak would say no.
So Spivak is most famous for her essay, Can the Subaltern Speak? Spivak comments on the attempts scholars have made to give the marginalized a voice, and she mainly focuses on the subaltern.
But the question is, what is a subaltern?
I don't know.
As Spivak defines it, everything that has limited or no access to the cultural imperialism is subaltern, a space of difference. Since the scholars who are trying to give the subalterns a voice are not in fact actually part of the marginalized group, they're not able to recreate that marginalized history accurately. The Skin of a Lion, it talks about a bunch of different immigrant stories, and throughout all of these experiences, Ondatjee unifies them to be able to actually clearly summarize the plight of immigrants, leading to it being heard in the end.
Our thesis is Michael Ondaatje's In the Skin of a Lion. The voice of the other must be supported and told through a kaleidoscope of voices, basically subaltern experiences, leading to one unified voice being heard. And if this doesn't happen, no voice is ever heard. In the Skin of the Lion is set in Toronto and follows a young man named Patrick.
Throughout his life, he meets a bunch of different people who are from different marginalized communities within the city. The people that have been building the city are completely ignored, forgotten about. Their deaths are not recorded.
The commissioner is really naive and basically treats the immigrant workers as expendable.
Ondatjee gets to the truth of the subaltern story by essentially contrasting the beliefs and goals of Commissioner Harris and Patrick Lewis.
When Patrick demands to know how many people died when working in the tunnels, the commissioner responds with, "There was no record kept."
So the fact that a record is never kept really exposes the immigrants' story and experiences while working there. The people who work in the tunnels are seen as essentially less worthy.
So basically subalterns are exploited by the colonizers because they have no way to voice themselves. They're seen as expendable, so why record their deaths?
The commissioner is a representation of this huge institutional power that's building up this small city into the glorious place that it is envisioned to be.
All the different Toronto ethnic enclaves are divided because they don't speak the same languages and don't have the same cultural practices, but they all have the same stories. Ondatjee gives each immigrant a voice in each chapter, which is exactly like the quote where they're passing the coat around. Hence the name of the book, In the Skin of a Lion, because a lion is around the world known as a powerful creature. So if you're in the skin of a lion, your voice is being heard, like your roar has power.
Spivak talks a lot about in her Can Subaltern Speak essay about the difference between men and women and how in the patriarchal power structure, women have become very much subaltern to men.
Essentially, men will always be the colonizers and women will always be the colonized.
Spivak even says, the subordinated gender following the dominant within the challenge of nationalism while remaining caught within gender oppression is not an unknown story.
Patrick works as a searcher. He is paid to discover the histories and pathways of the missing. He does this with Alice Gull, who tells him nothing of herself.
Alice refused to speak of the past. Even her stories of Hannah's father gave away nothing of herself. She was never self-centered in her mythologies.
No matter how hard Patrick searches, he is not able to pull the stories out of Clara or Alice. When Spivak says that subalterns don't have a voice, it doesn't mean they can't talk. It just means that no one understands them. Alice and Clara, they can tell their story, but it'll fall on deaf ears.
Yeah.
He'll never understand, so why waste a breath?
Within the effaced itinerary of the subaltern subject, the track of sexual difference is doubly effaced.
He still tries to give them a voice in the end of the book. Alice, who is not only a woman but a lower class woman, after her death, she's completely eradicated. She's eradicated twice because she's a nun who falls off of a bridge, and she is fueled with this outrage between the classes, between this indifference that the rich has to the poor in Toronto. And her goals are imparted on Patrick. Patrick, in the end, attempts to give her a voice by telling her story to the commissioner.
He doesn't tell anyone that it's because of Alice, so he takes on her passion and her role, which is basically erasing her. So she's doubly effaced because as a subaltern she lacks the history, and then Patrick takes away her tiny legacy. Spivak isn't exactly like putting blame on anyone. She's not saying that, oh, you've done this on purpose, essentially, in layman terms. But she's bringing authors' attention, and just people in general, the fact that it's just not possible to tell anyone else's story. That's why Ondatjee does such a good job, because by uniting all these different characters who have different ethnic backgrounds but have one thing in common, and that's being a subaltern, he's able to share a kind of general story and make the reader better understand.
So after, when the nun is saved, she disappears. She disappears from his life. She also disappears really from history. There's one article posted in the newspaper about a nun, but her name is never posted.
If the subaltern has no history and cannot speak, the subaltern as female is even more deeply in shadow.
Alice, being a nun, she was simply forgotten and lost in the archives of Toronto. And Patrick, being a searcher, being a man, he's able to express her beliefs and give her a voice when she was completely forgotten about. So this example of the young really highlights the fact that the immigrants, the subalterns, within the history of Toronto disappear and go unrecorded.
Well, okay, the only way for subalterns' voices to be heard is when the privileged or the colonizer realizes their privilege and their power and becomes an ally for the subaltern. So if we're talking about the feminist movement, when white upper middle class women realize that they need to speak and help women who are low income, like, things change. We have to recognize our power as upper middle class white girls and realize that we can really make a difference for people who are marginalized. And even if we don't fully understand, our power gives them the ability to speak.
I think that's a very good way of ending our mukbang.
Yes.
Actually.
Cheers!
Cheers to the tacos.